There's optimism in Ethiopia as a multi-million-dollar power dam is set to come online in the middle of the year. Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. Power issues are among the matters that we'll be covering in the next half hour, amidst our usual mix of the top business stories from across Africa. Here's what else is coming up. A second chance for child labourers in Cote d'Ivoire's cocoa industry. And we'll be looking at the pain of doing business in two cities just separated by a river of red tape. So then, let's start in Ethiopia. Its $1.8 billion dam project, which is under construction along the Omo River, could start generating power by June and be fully operational by early next year. The Gibe 3 dam will nearly double the country's power output at the moment, and that ideally should help resolve a chronic power outage and sustain a booming economy. Kiram Chala has more.
Work started in the Omo Valley of southern Ethiopia nearly 7.5 years ago, aiming at generating 1,870 megawatts of power for the Eastern Africa country. Reports suggest the Gibe 3 hydroelectric power generating dam works have been delayed by about 3 years due to funding related constraints. But now the Ethiopian Electric Power Corporation has announced that close to 90% of the dam is completed and the first phase of power generation will begin in June 2015. This is good news beyond Ethiopia.
Upon completion of Gibe 3, we are intending to export power to the regions, like to Kenya, for example, where the transmission construction to Kenya is under a tender process, which will commence very soon. So the main resource for this power export to Kenya is Gibe 3.
The mechanical work at Gilgal Gibe 3 project is being undertaken by Italy's Salini Construction, whereas Chinese companies handle the electrical work. The project is part of Ethiopia's plan of utilizing its energy sources. There is a sense of urgency to begin generating power from all power projects soon.
We are following a fast-tracking approach. We are not using a normal way of constructing power in any power, wind, hydropower, and so on. So if the normal construction period will take 7 to 8 years, you see, we using fast tracking. We are reducing it to 5 years or 6 years. So because otherwise we cannot entitled to catch up the demand, the growing demand. You see.
With plans of exporting power to the rest of the African continent, Ethiopia is harnessing its hydro, wind and geothermal power sources with close to $15 billion investment. And of all the projects, the 6,000 megawatts of electricity generating Renaissance Dam is the biggest not only in Ethiopia but also in the whole of the continent. And the completion of Gilgal Gibe 3 is part of that bigger plan of meeting the local power needs.
The investment in Ethiopia is currently booming, and the main backbone for this investment is energy. So from our assessment, from our studies, the demand for electricity is growing more than 25% per year. So as you can witness, we cannot cope up with this demand at the moment, and there is a lot of interruption as well. So this project will bring about a change in this situation.
At the moment, Ethiopia exports power to Kenya, Sudan and Djibouti and has lined up power exporting plans to Tanzania, Rwanda, South Sudan and Yemen. This energy export scheme, according to analysts, will boost Ethiopia's economy for the next decade. Currently, Ethiopia only generates 2,200 megawatts of power, and now that Gibe 3 is completed, it will double the nation's power generation capacity and avoid painful power cuts. Grumtala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
On to a bit of monetary policy news now. This week, Uganda Central Bank cancelled a scheduled auction of 2- and 5-year Treasury bonds after investors apparently asked for more returns than the central bank over there was comfortable paying. $65 million worth of the reopened 2-year and new 5-year notes were on offer. At the last sale on the 3rd of December, the 2-year notes had a weighted average yield of about 14.322%. That was up from 13.7% before. The 5-year bonds had a yield of 14.385% when they were last auctioned on the 5th of November, up from a prior yield of 13.935%. Meanwhile, over in West Africa, children in Cote d'Ivoire's cocoa-growing village of Cote are now getting an opportunity to go to school thanks to a program launched by the United Nations Children's Education Fund. That campaign essentially aims to reduce child labour. At the moment, child labour cases have gone down, and in response, schools have been compelled to expand to accommodate the higher demand for education from pupils who are now enrolling for classes, as Mahi Mutua reports.
10-year-old Halima used to toil in her father's cocoa field, but now sits in a classroom in Kofikru village, eager to catch up with her classmates. She started school 6 years late. Her parents never saw the need for education since the cocoa plantation provided for the family.
Before I came to school, when I worked in the fields, I would gather the cacao, put it in the sacks and transport it.
Kofikru is a small farming community about 20 kilometers from San Pedro, the second largest port city in Cote d'Ivoire. The main crop grown here is cocoa. The harvested beans are mainly exported to Europe for chocolate making and other products for international consumers. Cocoa production in the country accounts for approximately 40% of the world's supply, and most of it is produced in the southwest part of the country.
When I work on my plantation, I get good results. I am a farmer. I have to show my children what I do, so that tomorrow they will know.
They didn't really see the importance of school, because they left places like Buake, Korhogo, maybe Mali, Burkina to come here, and they came to have a farm. So if they have a child, the child will go to the fields with them. If they're cleaning, the child cleans with them.
The protection program has been running for 5 years, and the response has been overwhelming. Classrooms in several schools are filled to capacity, and institutions have been forced to add more classes to accommodate the swelling number of pupils.
My oldest children were educated by my parents in my home village. They started school, but because we didn't have enough money, they weren't able to finish. But after all, because of the awareness in the village, I decided that I had to send my youngest to school.
Halima, like other Ivorian children going to school, looks to the future almost certain that with education, life will be better for her and other families in the cocoa-growing regions. Mahe Mutua, CCTV.
Amidst all the rout that we're seeing in prices in oil, some would say spare a thought for Nigeria. It has now had to intensify its search for new markets for its crude oil after the United States cut its imports of the commodity from Nigeria by 97%, as U.S. domestic oil output has risen. Falling oil prices have dealt quite the blow to the West African state. It is highly dependent on oil for its revenues. Crude oil prices are trading sharply lower in global futures markets amid speculation of higher U.S. inventories, which suggests that the global supply glut and lower prices by extension might actually last for longer than expected. Already, the nation's marketing team has been wooing potential clients in Europe, Asia, South America and elsewhere on the African continent. In the meantime, though, Nigeria's Labour Congress has warned the government against newly introduced austerity measures like the scaling back of subsidies and tax increments given the fall in oil prices. Instead, it wants the state to diversify its sources of revenues. Ghana, in the meantime, is planning to reduce its dependence on what it describes as unreliable gas supply from Nigeria in the coming year. Now, the country has started to process gas from its offshore Jubilee oil field through a pipeline project that could save the government over $300 million a year in fuel costs. Ghana's new Atuabo gas processing plant was recently streamed, supplying 50 million cubic feet of gas a day to nearby thermal power generators operated by the Volta River Authority power utility. in the western town of Aboadze to provide about 500 megawatts of power. A statement from Ghana Gas said the Atuabo gas processing plant has also produced some 3,000 tons of liquefied petroleum gas and condensate as a byproduct. 2 more gas fields expected to come online by 2017 to add to what Jubilee is putting out right now, which is operated, of course, by the British oil firm Tullow. All right then, a quick run through markets here for you. Not much development across the board, relatively flat in Nigeria and in Kenya. Kenya, however, is an interesting story we're keeping a close eye on. On the 1st of January, capital gains tax was reintroduced. It had a bit of a Lazarus moment, if you will. What we're going to be keeping a close eye on is what effect will this have on the Kenya shilling rate and, of course, the influx of foreign money into the NSE. Up next, we'll be looking at the pain of doing business between cities separated by a river of red tape. And we'll have details on how robots ease the pressure for Amazon shoppers this festive season. Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies. We help you make sense of the fast-changing African business landscape. We take you where the business is happening.
Global Business, weekdays at this time on CCTV Africa.
Effects of the austerity measures are evident and were expected. Egyptians, however, seem to be patient about it. But El-Sisi told government he wants to control the prices promptly before people's patience runs out.
Welcome back to the program. You're still watching Global Business Africa from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Let's talk about labor issues. About 37,000 Zimbabweans could be deported from South Africa after the applications for special permits to stay in the country were declined. Now, the deadline for Zimbabweans to apply for special permits for the next 3 years has now expired.
In 2009, South Africa handed 245,000 legal Zimbabwean immigrants who'd fled economic problems back home a lifeline via 5-year special permits. In August last year, Home Affairs ministries of the 2 countries agreed a successor program which would give permit holders a 3-year extension. They had to have applied by yesterday. South African officials had received 207,000 applications by Tuesday the 30th. At least 37,000 applicants had either been turned down or had not submitted their papers, and they're the ones who could be headed back home.
Earlier, I spoke to Kembo Mohadi, Zimbabwe's Home Affairs Minister. He told me they're yet to get official communication from their counterparts following expiry of that deadline. He did, however, say that Zimbabwe continues to negotiate to make the registration process an ongoing exercise, given the vast number of Zimbabweans that leave this country in search of better prospects in Africa's biggest economy.
Continued engagement is the route that seems to have gained most currency with ordinary citizens here.
We'd rather expect them to sit down and come up with something conclusive between the South African authorities and the Zimbabwean authorities.
My real thinking is that negotiations between the 2 governments should really continue until such a time that Zimbabwe is in a position to meaningfully accommodate those people back home.
As according to our economy, it's not all right, but it should give us another grace period for our people so that we will see what we'll do. Because if they evict those people to come here again, what will we do? They will become jobless in Zimbabwe.
It's estimated there are as many as 1.5 million Zimbabweans living in South Africa. Farai Makutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Now then, consider this story. You've got 2 cities on either side of a river. Trade ties between those 2, however, in this case you're talking about the Democratic Republic of Congo and Congo-Brazzaville, are less than stellar. Businesses on either side of the border complain of tariff and non-tariff barriers imposed by governments on both sides. And that in turn forces them to seek trade partners far, far away.
The hustle and bustle of the Democratic Republic of Congo's capital, Kinshasa. Traders here dealing in loincloths are making quick sales, but theirs is not a business for the faint-hearted. Most of these traders have had to battle stringent cross-border tariffs and travel requirements to bring in their supplies from neighboring Congo, whose capital is a stone's throw away. Despite proximity of the capital cities, Kinshasa and Brazzaville of Congo, separated by the River Congo, bilateral trade between these countries has remained low over decades due to trade barriers and high tariffs imposed on goods by both sides.
We are asked to buy the passport, visa, accommodation and paper tickets. We could be making more profit, but if one has to buy all these documents, we don't know.
The relationship between the two French-speaking sister countries has also remained lukewarm over decades. Recently, thousands of Congolese traders were expelled from Brazzaville, freezing commercial cross-border activities between the two countries. Many traders feel that trade with Congo-Brazzaville should be simplified to help grow small businesses in both countries. The new visa requirement by Congo is a case in point.
In the past, you could go to Brazzaville with $20 or $30 and buy loincloth, come and sell and still have considerable benefits. But for the moment, with the passport and visa, it is no longer enough profit. There are very few customers. This is why we asked the government to review this decision.
The strenuous requirements have made further off destinations a more preferable source market for materials.
Right now, we don't do it anymore in Brazzaville. Loincloths here we buy from abroad. We do our shopping in Dubai and China and bring loincloths that we sell. The money flows back into the population and we can make good profits as before.
Our economy at one time was essential in Congo-Brazzaville in the sense that they relied on electricity as our main source of energy. But something has changed.
Both countries are blessed with abundant mineral wealth, but it has brought little or no change to the lives of millions of their citizens who still live in poverty. Penina Karibe, CCTV.
Now, over in the United States, holiday shopping just went through its busiest season. Online purchases played a far greater role than ever. In order to keep up with demand, the online retail giant Amazon introduced a fleet of robots called Kiva to lend a hand. Well, not in the literal sense, but you get what I'm talking about. As Mark New reports, however, many are concerned about the quest to speed up delivery. They're concerned that they may lower prices, but that has a hidden cost.
At 10 Amazon fulfillment centers across America, 15,000 robots called Kiva scoot across the floor in perfect unison. The robots locate and transport heavy loads of goods, preparing them for delivery.
So every time there's an imperfection in the floor, one robot measures this and then communicates it instantly to all the other robots. It's very, very cutting edge. Being able to control this many robots with this level of accuracy is right at the state of the art.
Professor Goldberg says Kiva has impressed everyone in the field of robotics. But while the robots are proving their value to the company, it's unclear whether they're good for workers.
It's naive to presume that you're not going to, that workers are not going to be affected. Certainly will. And I think it's something we have to be really conscious of and sensitive to. One of the ideas, though, is that it's also creating many jobs. All of it cannot be automated.
If there's any place that's a good fit for automation, the post office certainly comes to mind. But behind the desk at San Jose, California's mail processing center, it's already happening.
This is the automatic facer cancellation system. 31,000 pieces of mail come through here each hour. This machine can actually read the handwriting on the letter and slap a barcode on it. 17 people used to have to do this job. Now it's just 2.
One person to dump the mail in and one to take it out. Similar automation systems work to sort magazines and parcels too. Since automation was introduced, the U.S. postal workforce has trimmed from roughly 800,000 to 500,000 employees. But the U.S. Postal Service proudly says it's never laid anyone off because it retrains people to do different jobs and does not replace staff who retire.
So now we're at a manageable number based on the amount of volume that we're currently seeing, and we project that through more advancements in technology, we'll be able to do more with less. What that does for us over the long term is it keeps our prices down and makes us remain viable into the future.
But does that future inevitably include robots that can move heavier objects without taking breaks or requiring benefits?
It's a little ballet.
Jerry Mikulski is the founder of the Relationship Economy Expedition think tank.
What it's saving them is walking miles and miles and miles through these corridors, which is insanely time-consuming.
Mikulski is comforted by the fact that people still play a role in packing and checking the boxes. But he questions whether automation will soon take over those packing jobs too and keep moving up the chain.
Amazon is notoriously thrifty, but they will try to take the costs out of anything they do. And labor is a very big cost everywhere we look. So I think Amazon is hell-bent to get rid of, as many humans as they can in the loop.
Mikulski says many tech companies view humans as a temporary inconvenience. He says Amazon is experimenting with drones for delivery. Google's self-driving cars could eliminate transport services, and the already on-the-market robot Baxter can be trained to pick up and move different objects.
The problem is that people inventing automation right now and perfecting it and making it a lot better, they don't necessarily know that they're facing important moral choices. This is just a race to the finish line to see who automates best.
Many experts cite education as the best answer for humans to prevent robots from taking their jobs. But technology analysts like Mikulski say it's not always a guarantee that the new skills one trains in will be able to stay ahead of the pace of automation. Mark New, CCTV, San Jose, California.
Now then, 2014 also saw the e-commerce industry become one of the new engines of China's growth. The sector is expected to account for nearly 10% of all retail revenue by the end of this year. Currently, the market is still dominated by Alibaba through its Taobao and Tmall sales sites and its payment arm Alipay. But Tencent is also a major player thanks to its social networking applications WeChat and QQ, as our search engine Baidu and the e-commerce site JD.com. So then, 2015 has this interesting chessboard. The question is there enough room in the market for all of them?
Alibaba made its blockbuster debut on the New York Stock Exchange on September 18th at $68 a share. Thanks to the high demand for shares, underwriters exercised an option to sell an additional 48 million of them. All the numbers mean that Alibaba raked in $25 billion in its public offering, beating the previous record held by the Chinese banking behemoth, the Agricultural Bank of China. In the 3 months since then, Alibaba's shares have been a bit volatile at times. They hit a low in mid-October and rose again, hitting a high on November 10th, when shares closed at over $119, the day of Alibaba's super sales for China's Singles' Day shopping spree.
Alibaba is safe from hostile takeover from people like PEs, plus the scale of the company is so big. The factors that might possibly impact Alibaba's share price would be actions by its large shareholders, say if SoftBank or Yahoo sold their holdings. After the November 11th promotions, the price went back down. It seemed like people can predict the exact trend of Alibaba's share prices.
November 11 became an online shopping festival at Alibaba in 2009. This year, the company reported more than 571 billion yuan in sales on the day, compared to just 362 billion yuan during last year's festival. Alibaba followed up its online success with a new idea this year, combining online with offline business with a sale on December 12 that encouraged the use of its financing site Alipay.
For example, NGS Supermarket has teamed up with Alipay to offer big discounts at their stores, and taxi passengers were exempt from the initial flag drop fare if they paid via their Alipay wallet. Starting from December 12th, a new consumer culture was born, and it's led by a traditional internet company.
But the internet is not just about selling things, it's also about people connecting with each other via social media. And that's been the specialty of another company. Ma Huateng, CEO of Tencent, has been making a success of that for over 15 years. Tencent owns the popular internet chat software QQ for use on PCs and the even more popular WeChat service for mobile telephones. Tencent's total profits were 5.6 billion RMB in the third quarter of this year, respectively close to Alibaba's 6.8 billion. All of this year, the two companies have done nothing but ramp up their competition in online payments, taxi apps, and mobile e-commerce. China now has 632 million internet users, and that means both Alibaba and Tencent each has 632 million potential customers. It's hard to say just how far Tencent wants to push its competition with Alibaba in the e-commerce market, but the fact is that the company bought 15% of internet retail giant JD.com in March. Tencent, of course, is not competing with Alibaba all alone. It has teamed up with a third major player, internet search engine Baidu. And they in turn have joined with China's biggest commercial land developer, Dalian Wonder Group, to form a 5 billion yuan e-commerce group. Why is a property developer getting involved in the internet battles? Zhang Binbin believes it has to.
The debt ratio of Wanda is pretty high, and that's why its Hong Kong listing has been postponed again and again. Because the company has an extremely high debt ratio, it has to set up a story about e-commerce to balance its another very heavy foods, commercial property.
Everyone in the deal has his own agenda. Wanda has offline shops, while Tencent and Baidu have online resources. What could that mean? More opportunities in yet another of China's booming internet sectors, online and offline combinations of sales. Timothy Pope, ICS for CCTV, Shanghai.
All right, then a quick run through commodity prices here for you. The fall in crude oil price is still very much in effect, but the interesting part is what's happening in the retail end of the market, not the futures bit of it. South Africa, for example, retail prices of petrol expected to drop by about 10% a litre on Wednesday next week, according to the Department of Energy. And we expect to see this acceleration happen in the first quarter of the year, assuming this trend does hold. And the same thing will happen as well in East Africa. Now, for decades, potato farming in Mali has been mainly an artisanal activity, with many growing the crop just for subsistence, not for commercial gain. Though few large-scale firms and virtually no infrastructure to aid farmers in the production of the crop, much less getting it to the market. For that reason, many farmers completely abandoned the crop. But that is now changing, as Mahiamoto reports.
Umar Sanogo is a local potato farmer who has been producing potatoes for more than 20 years in Mali. He, unlike other farmers, has assistants who help him dig the land, plant seeds and irrigate the crops. But though he enjoys some of the benefits of his hard work, he could be doing a lot better if he and other potato farmers got proper support in farming.
I can't tell you the exact quantity, but Sako region produces a yearly average of several thousand tons. There are many producers presently, and they haven't reached a high level of organization. That's the reason we don't know the potato production figures. Not all producers are delivering their own figures.
The lack of clear production figures has caused disparities in the supply and demand chain within the local and regional markets. Traders in the capital, Bamako, have resorted to importing potatoes in order to meet local demand. In the years 2000 and 2001, the country imported 1,000 tons of potatoes to make up for shortages, and this figure is believed to have increased over the period.
Presently, potatoes are scarce in the market, and we are obliged to import cargo from Spain and Morocco, and the prices are skyrocketing. Should the domestic producers be better organized, we should have better supplies all year round. Also, you have to account for the large exporting Malian potatoes to neighboring countries. Their price there is 84 cents per kilo, whereas locally produced potatoes are often sold in the domestic market at 23 cents per kilo.
Retail prices are falling down to 28 or even 23 cents per kilo, and the cost of the season is too high, between 43 and 56 US dollars. After the crop, when you do your accounts, you end up with a minimal gain.
The Malian government has not commented on investing in the sector, but thousands of farmers hope things will turn around for the better going forward. Mahia Mutwa, CCTV.
And that's where this edition of the program comes to a close. I'm Ramanyang in Nairobi. Thank you for watching. Good night.